Thanks for coming back again. We're
Yes.
talking about more relationship stuff. This is our last episode this season, this mini-series in this season about relationships.
Yep.
So far we've talked about dating online, toxic relationships, strength-based relationships, and what it takes to have a long-term relationship.
Yeah. So one of the things that we've kind of seen throughout these last few episodes for this little mini-series is what do you want?
Yeah.
You know?
And what do you not want?
And what do you not want?
Like who are you? What do you want? What do you not want? Mm-hmm. And how do you formulate that in a way that is helpful to you when you're single and you're moving into a new relationship, especially when you're our age or older? Mm-hmm. Like once you've reached 30s and later, I feel like a lot of us don't want to mess around anymore and want to just get straight to
the
it.
point.
Yeah, let me just ask you the important questions, and if we don't match up, then we don't match up.
So actually, both of us started relationships in our mid to late 30s. So we've gone through this before. We've asked the questions on the first date, and we've talked about all the things that we felt needed to be talked about, and it seems to be successful. I mean, we're both at 3 and 4 years, right? Mm-hmm. Almost. Yeah. About that. So, yeah. So today we're going to talk about some deal breakers and relationships when you're 30 and older, because it's weird.
Yeah. So if that's you, tune in, especially if you're single. Yeah. Or, if you feel like you're ending a relationship and you want to really not make the mistakes you've made in the past relationships.
Or it's like, how do I even date at this point? You know? Because, like, for me, I think about we're in such a weird age where it's like you have people with no kids, and then you have people with grandkids or teenage kids or just starting to have kids. Like, in your 30s, it's so weird.
And then how do you date too? Like, how do you meet people?
Right.
I think my advice for people trying to meet people is go to every event that you're invited to. Like barbecues, birthday parties. And if you can't, you can't. But as many of them as you can. Yeah. Because I feel like you meet people that you wouldn't normally meet there.
That's true.
And sometimes you could really vibe with them.
It's funny, I make that face because I think COVID has fucked all of us up by oh my God, I have to go somewhere.
Human connection's important though.
Yes.
But also, I'm a big fan of online dating. That's how I met my partner. Online dating.
Yeah.
And you can ask all of the questions you want to ask before you even meet the person. So
before
you get physically attracted and physically involved, you can ask the questions that are important beforehand.
So you're kind of ruling out that checklist.
Yeah, these are the things that are important to me. This is where I want to go in my life. Do you line up with that or do you not? If you don't, then why would I waste my time meeting you, being attracted to you, wanting to try to make this work when I know that it's not eventually going to work? We'll eventually get to a point where I'll have to choose between my dreams or you.
So how about we take turns? What would you ask or should you ask on a first date? And then you and I can kind of take turns. I think that would be fun.
I'm going to go dark first.
Cool.
This shouldn't be your first question, but I feel like it's one of the most important ones. I always tell people to ask something like, in what way were you most affected in a negative way by being born into the family you were born into? Sorry. And follow up, what are you doing about it? So say, for an example for me, if somebody asked me that, I would say, I was born into a family of alcoholics and none of them had goals or plans or follow through. Mm-hmm. And I tried to break that chain by having rules around drinking. Sometimes I go through long periods where I don't drink at all. Sometimes I have rules where I don't drink at home. I don't drink by myself. I don't drink unless it's a social situation. Mm-hmm. And I also have goals for my life and am really consistent with wanting to break that chain for my kids.
So would you share that, upon asking that question to your new prospective partner, we'll call it, would you then kind of share that side as well of you? Yeah. To kind of see where you guys align?
Here's the thing. When you're our age, and even at any age, really, a lot of times people try to put their best face on and they don't want to give people all the nitty gritty. But it's my personal belief that you should just tell people the honest truth right at the get-go. And that can be a little bit scary sometimes because that might mean that somebody doesn't like you. But I would rather know now, before we have gotten attached to each other, that this is going to be a problem for you, or that you don't respect me, or you don't like me, or that this is an issue for you. I'd rather know that before we get a chance to get attached than later, because that's when it hurts more.
Especially physically. So, like, in my personal relationships, sorry, babe, I'm going to share some details. We didn't have sex for like a month and a half. Like, we were talking and casually hanging out, I guess dating, and like doing all of those things and having daily conversations and all of that before the physical intimacy happened.
It's a really healthy thing.
And it's like, that's the first thing, or this is the first relationship where that has been the case. Like, in previous relationships, it's like, I'm gonna go into this thinking you're a one-night stand and then get attached to you and then date you.
Listen, and sex is important, okay? A good sex life is important. But this is gonna sound funny, but I'm just gonna say it. Like, I can make sex good, like, given the right environment. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like,
yeah.
For a girl, it's like here. So, like, I could just go here and it's going to be all right. I'm going to handle my business and it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
So that is actually less important than the mental stuff, like who you are, what your goals are, if we can have fun together, if we can have good conversations together, if I can be your friend. Like, that's going to be important, because someday we're going to be old and wrinkly and tired and we won't even really care that much about sex.
Yeah.
You know? So I think at the end of the day, if you're trying to pick a person that you want to get to that point with, you got to remember the other stuff is more important.
Yeah.
You can make the sex work.
Yeah.
I mean, provided the right conversations and attraction level.
Yeah. And foreplay.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, trying to keep this PG.
Okay, what's a question you would ask?
So, two of the things I look for, and also, like, we're going to get to this later, but I think, like, knowing what you want is important. So, two of the things I look for is their way of communication. And that necessarily doesn't have to be a question. It's
observing.
Yes, it's the observation.
Don't get stuck in the moment.
Right.
Pull back a little bit and just observe them.
Right. And so I always, like, look, even in any relationships, not even in, like, a relationship with my partner, but, like, friendships professional relationships.
That's such a good tip. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Like, I always just observe their way of communication, and then I ask myself, is this something that I can get with, I guess? Something that I can be about for long term. And then the second part is, and this is going to be really controversial, but I think at this time in our age, like, if I were to be single today, I'm 37, if I were to be single today, one of the biggest questions is, what do you want in a family? Like, kids.
Yeah, that's an important question. Like, do you want more kids? Do you not want more kids?
Because that's something I talked to my partner about. Literally, this is a funny story. I have to tell it, okay? So, I met my partner. I had already scheduled a surgery to get my tubes out. And so that was one of our first conversations. I'm like, if you want kids, my surgery is literally in like 2 months. So, and I don't think I'm going to change that in the next 2 months. So I knew exactly what I wanted in the realm of, I don't want to have kids. Like, having children will affect me. Like, I did tell him, like, having more kids will affect my health and well-being. And so this is why I'm doing this. And so, like, that was one of the first conversations we had.
Yeah, and if he had wanted kids, that would have been a deal breaker.
Right. And I think that he was willing to give it a shot, you know. I don't know if I ever got a straight answer of saying, like, nope, definitely don't want kids. But it was like we'll see what happens. Because there's other ways to have kids, people. Like, well, you know, if you don't have your...
sometimes people don't know. Like, they don't know that about themselves. Like, is this a deal breaker for me? I'm not sure.
Right. And both of us at that time, since we had communicated effectively about it, were like, let's just see where this goes and then we'll make a decision. And I think that's healthy too, to be able to compromise. Ooh, compromise is a good one that you got to put right in the beginning. And that's...
Are you able to compromise?
That's a form question. That's a form of communication too. Like, you kind of seeing where they...
Before you even get into all of that, like, I think you should have a conversation about, like, hey, we're at an age where I don't want to waste your time. I don't want you to waste my time. Can we agree to be really honest with each other about all the ugly stuff right up front so that we can see if we jive or not? Because if you just go in with the mentality that you're going to be honest about everything, that doesn't necessarily mean that the other person will. But if you just say it like that, like, this is why I feel like it's important, I feel like most people will meet you where you're at.
Yeah. This doesn't really align with the first date question thing, but I also think giving yourselves time to learn each other is also important. I think we may have said that in the strength-based relationship episode, but I'm just going to reiterate it again because one of the things I've had in this relationship that I haven't had in the past relationships is really taking the time to learn each other, learn our quirks, learn our strengths, learn communication. Again, I'm going to say that word 57 times in this episode. And just kind of do the observing thing, like to see how they react to certain things.
Observing too, I think a really good practice for somebody on a first date is to hold on a minute and pay attention to how they're feeling on the inside with this person. So if I'm feeling super like uncomfortable, nervous, anxious, a lot of people will be like, oh, that's butterflies. It's because I like this person so much. No.
Is it?
No, it's probably not. If I feel immediately comfortable with you, I feel like that's a good sign. Although I have said before, sometimes I feel comfortable with people that are actually not good for me because I grew up in a very chaotic childhood.
Yeah, it's that natural instinct.
But I would say try to pay attention to yourself and see if what you're feeling inside is comfortable because you're used to it, or comfortable because you feel like this person sees you and that's like a good happy feeling. Like, do you feel expansive or do you feel like you're curling inward?
I also like, and again, this isn't about the first date, but it could be to observe their reactions to things. That's important too. So like, as you're internally grasping your feelings, you're also like kind of seeing what their reaction to things that you're communicating to them. Like, I remember...
Watch their body language too. Like, if you're saying something and they're like not making eye contact or like looking away, like, that's a sign that they're not jiving with what you're saying.
They're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know? And maybe even asking, like, I don't know if this is too deep or, like, they would think you're batshit crazy, but, like, what are you feeling right now?
Yeah.
You know? Like, seeing how they would react to that.
You seem uncomfortable with what I just said. Yes. Are you?
What does that make you feel right now? And then you can get into that deeper level of connection, I think.
Yeah.
Which if more people communicated that way, I feel like it would change the course of relationships.
And you'd waste a lot less time.
Yeah.
You know what else, though?
So do that.
You have to be willing to walk away when you know a person isn't it.
Yeah.
Like, you know this person doesn't vibe with you. You know that you don't have the same goals. You know that you're not going the same places. This person wants kids and you don't. You both know that without a doubt. Don't torture yourself by going down that road, because eventually you're going to get to a point where it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Because of that issue.
Yeah. Oh, man. I want to talk about that a little bit later, like knowing when it's time to, cut it off. But what are some of... I know some people are listening to this and they're like, ooh, I don't know if I can do that on the first date. What are some ways that what are some things we shouldn't talk about? And I don't necessarily want to say don't bring this up at all, but I think there's a difference of, again, communication style. Like, I'm not going to show up on a first date and be like, hi, my name is Leanna, how are you? By the way, I don't want kids. Ever. I'm not going to do that. Or, by the way, how do you communicate? tell me what the last 3 relationships were like in your communication style. Like, I'm not going to do that.
See, and I'm the opposite. I'm going to get right into it. So I think one thing that's important is to recognize...
But how you get into it is different.
Yeah. But I mean, I would have that gentle conversation with, like, this is why I want to talk about all these things. And this is why it's important, I think, for us to be honest with each other.
The alignment.
But I also think it's important to be yourself. Like, if you are a person that's not comfortable with those conversations right away, don't have those conversations right away. Mm-hmm. If you are a person that is comfortable with yourself and all of your beliefs and all these things and you don't care who knows them, have those conversations right away. Mm-hmm. And if that makes the other person uncomfortable and you want to be with a person that's comfortable with those things just like you are, then maybe that's a deal breaker.
Maybe that's a deal breaker, yeah. But one of the things I would not say on the first date, I would not talk about who I've been with or what my last relationships were like. I don't want to talk about that right away.
Yeah, I wouldn't talk about who I've, quote unquote, been with because, first of all, that's none of your damn business.
Yeah.
And the things that I did or the people I slept with before I met you, it's none of your business.
Yeah.
And if you have a problem with the events that led me to your doorstep and made me the person that I am today, then it's already not going to work.
Yeah.
So, like, my partner obviously doesn't want to hear about my last escapades, you know, like he does not want to know unless it directly affects his life, which I'm fine with, but I'm also not going to pretend like things didn't happen before I met him. Like, yeah. I'm not going to pretend I was a virgin when I met you. That's stupid. That's stupid. And also, I am who I am because of the experiences that I had.
Yeah. And I think it also takes... See, it's that reaction piece, too. So when that conversation does come up, hopefully not on the first date, how are they going to react to that?
Yeah. And are you a jealous guy or girl?
Yes. See, that's going to prove that aspect of them.
Yeah.
Like,
does it make you uncomfortable if we run into somebody that I dated? Or in my case, like, I'm best friends with my kid's dad.
Yeah.
Like, is that going to be a problem for you? Because I'm telling you right now, that's a deal breaker.
Yeah, I have to have him in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, so one day we went on a date. Another story time, by the way. Ugh, he's gonna kill me. He's gonna be like, why are you saying this on the air? So
those are my favorite stories.
So we went out on a date, and we were walking somewhere, and a past escapade, we'll call it, got brought up. And I was like, I felt comfortable enough. This was like years into our relationship, couple years into our relationship. And a past escapade got brought up, and I was like, yeah, I slept with that person. And he's like, you slept with him? And started just straight dogging on me. Like, it was just, you know, mind you, he wasn't a horrible dude, okay? But it was just funny how his reaction to that, because that was the first time that we had actually talked kind of about that kind of thing, you know.
And some people are really cool with stuff like that.
And
like,
he just started dogging on me, and it was funny, and we're laughing, and, you know, he's
But sometimes it goes another way. Like,
sometimes it gets negative, yeah.
I know, and I won't name names, but I know some people that I really love who had a relationship that did not last because that was a huge issue.
Yeah.
Running into people that they knew that the other person had slept with was a huge issue for them.
Yeah.
And if you know that to be true about yourself, the partner you choose has to either be from where you're from to minimize the amount of people you'll run into, or has to be a virgin when you meet them, or whatever the case may be that would make, you know, like, if you know that this is a thing for you, pick a person that matches that.
Yeah.
Or be really, really invested in growing through that.
Yeah, and I was going to say that's almost the better option, because when you're in, let's face it, when you're dating 30 or older, there is a high possibility that that person is not a virgin and has not slept with somebody you know. Especially in a small town. I'm just going to say small town life. And I feel like growing through that is going to be... That's another thing. You can support your partner if you feel like this relationship is going to work and this comes up, like, later on, not on the first date. I'd say you could support your partner through that growth. You know, like, why is that making you uncomfortable? Like, is that something that you want to work towards or through? And yeah, you could do that too.
Relationships, you're going to be faced with all of your triggers in a relationship. That's almost like the point of relationship. It's like an incubator to work through your crap.
Yeah. Well, and then also, we have so much, like, past trauma from whatever or wherever, whether it's, like, family or something you went through, that we sit with all the time that can be triggered at any point in time by any person. And relationships are the catalyst to handling those and growing through those.
Grow through them, to heal them,
And how you react and how they react is going to be the catalyst to, you know, how you grow through that, I think. I've said this before, but I'm listening to the Adult Chair podcast, and it talks about knowing your child, adolescent, and adult chair. And so, like, your reaction is the adolescent chair.
Like, am I reacting from
my adolescent chair? And then, so if you can catch that you're reacting in your adolescent chair, which is like that knee-jerk reaction, then if you can catch that and say, I'm going to stop that, I'm going to go back to my adult chair and think about this logically. So I've been doing that a lot, and it's been pretty fucking cool.
You know what else that makes me think of hearing you say that? If you're a person that's really, like, in tune with, like, psychology and, like, how a person thinks and where you are on this level, and you want somebody that's also on that level, that should be something you're looking for on a first date, too.
I think intellectualism is very important.
Yeah. Like, if you're, quote-unquote, woke, and you're on a date with somebody who is not woke at all...
Yeah.
That's probably going to be a problem. You aren't speaking the same language.
Right.
You aren't viewing the world through the same lens.
Right.
Yeah. So, I think that's a problem. But to circle back to this first date thing and things not to talk about, I feel like there's not much I wouldn't talk about on a first date. Like, if you want to talk about bowel
how
movements,
would you talk about it? How would you talk about the nitty-gritty?
I just sort of lay it out there. Like, I would be like, I'm a really honest person, and this is like speed dating, where you just lay it all out on the table, and if you like that, that's cool. If you don't like that, no hard feelings, and let's just agree to part ways before, or be friends. Like, when I did online dating before I met my current partner, there was one person who I became pretty good friends with, actually, because we were like, well, obviously this isn't going to work, but, you know, I really like a lot of the things about you. Let's be friends.
Yeah.
And we became friends, and he was a cool friend for me.
Yeah.
So, I think we're adults now.
Yeah.
We can be mature enough to say, hey, you know what, I really like you, but I don't think a relationship will work. So let's agree to be friends.
So what you're saying is, there's not really anything that shouldn't be talked about. It's just how you approach the conversation.
Yeah, you can't just be like, hey, my name's Holly, my parents are alcoholics, I was sexually molested by my grandfather, and I have... I don't know. I have, you know, like, you can't just dump it all out there without any context first.
Yeah.
I think you could start with, hey, you know, at this stage in the game, I think it's important to be honest. I think it's important to just get right to it and tell you all the things that I think are important.
Yeah.
Ask the important questions and see from there if we want to continue and try to get to know each other more or not. And I'm willing to be completely open and honest with anything you want to know. Things that have been problems in past relationships. If you want to know if that's going to be a problem with me, come right out and ask me. And I'm going to be honest with you about it. And I would like the same from you in return. And then we can see if that doesn't work for us, no hard feelings. Like, we're mature adults. We could be friends.
Yeah.
Or we could decide not to even talk. That's fine too.
Yeah.
And then if we both agree that, hey, I do kind of like you and I think I could work with what you're putting down, then we could talk about a second date later.
Yeah. So I'm like, I feel like I'm the opposite. I feel like I like to say, and it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, I know who I am, and I know that I cannot be that forthcoming in the first date. So, but I've learned, despite my past relationships, I've learned that I like to take my time.
Hey. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Because I have not. I look at her and laugh because I definitely have not. I met a man, and we got married 7 months later. So there's that. But,
I met a man, and 9 months later he proposed. So
yeah.
same.
So, that did not work.
I am Unsurprisingly, not the queen of taking it slow.
But I feel now that I know what I know, I'm glad that me and my current partner have taken it slow, and that's how I am.
Almost more romantic too, to take it slow. Like I can see that in going the way that I go, which I won't change, even though I know the other way is more romantic. I don't like surprises, and sometimes you find things. Here's what happens with me. Okay, this is why it's important for me to do it this way.
Okay.
If I go slow and romanticize all of this and let it just unfold slowly and beautifully like a beautiful flower, then later I find out things that would have been deal breakers for me, but I'm already attached. Mm. And I have a hard time saying, hey, I'm already attached to you, but these are deal breakers, so I'm going to go ahead and say, this isn't going to work for me. And instead, I try and work through and convince myself that I can work with it. It's going to be okay.
So when you're in that stage, you use this word romanticizing, okay? And so in the stage of romanticizing a relationship, do you think that you are setting expectations for that partner without realizing it?
Well, I think everybody definitely does that.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes it's not even an expectation that comes up. It's something that you didn't even know was going to be a thing. And then you find out and you're like, or you think, I'll deal with that later. For example, I'll give you one very good example in this relationship that I'm in now. When I first started dating my partner, he told me, hey, I dated a crazy person, and she says she's pregnant. I don't know if the baby's mine or not. And at the time, I was like, well, I don't even know if I like you, so I guess we'll see what happens. I did not want any more kids. That was going to be a deal breaker for me.
Yeah.
Okay? Fast forward, we didn't get a DNA test until this child was 10 months old.
Yeah.
I've been with my partner like a year at this point.
Yep. I remember that.
And then I have to say, well, I really love this person. And, you know, obviously I made the choice to stay there. And this child has become my own child. And I adore him. I love him like one of my own.
We all do.
But I had to push aside one of my deal breakers and make that work in this relationship. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I hadn't gotten attached, and maybe that's because that it all worked out in my case, it became a blessing.
Yeah.
But there are other situations that are not blessings that if you had known in advance before you got attached, you wouldn't have made excuses for that person.
Yeah.
Like, say that person's an alcoholic and you know that's a deal breaker for you. But already you're in love with them before you figure it out.
So you just stay.
And then you stay even though you know you shouldn't.
That's toxic.
Yeah. But you're in love with that person.
Yeah, but you can love anybody. Like, I could love...
But it's hard to let go once you... It's harder to let go once you're already in love than if you weren't in love yet.
I would say not unless you have your boundaries. Not unless you know what you want. I would say not unless you know what you want. Because there's, like, we both walked away from marriages. We loved those men, you know. But at some point, we took a step back and said, I'm questioning this because can I stay if this continues? That's an important, powerful question. Yeah. And both of us asked ourselves that. And then I really got to looking at the scope of, outside of love, the scope of the factual information of what this relationship was going to provide for longevity purposes. And it just wasn't. And that's what you did too. I remember talking through that with you sitting in your closet.
I had a big closet.
Yeah, it was a big closet.
I miss that closet.
But yeah, that's just, you know, it all comes down to it. And I do remember talking to you when you found out that, you know, the baby stuff with your partner. And I'm like, are you going to stay? Like, I think that was
I'm like, I don't know.
I think that was my first question. I remember talking to you over the phone, and I'm like, are you going to stay with him? Like, because in that point in my head, I would have been like, fuck this.
Bye.
You know? But that's me. Of course, it would have been, like, I would have given an explanation to him and a follow-up and all that stuff. But who knows? Like, I questioned myself in my relationship at that point. And I was like, would I have? You know?
Mm-hmm.
Would I have done that if, you know, my partner had a child? Yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting. So I think there's a fine balance between asking the questions in the first date and then also looking for observing throughout your first months of dating.
And
like there's a
people
good
can answer the questions.
connections.
Like sometimes people don't know themselves. So let's say you ask the questions. You ask all the right questions, but they don't know themselves enough to give you an honest answer. They give you what they think is the honest answer, but
or what they think you want to hear, which is narcissism.
And when you observe and pay attention, you can see whether that's true or not.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's intentional, sometimes it's not intentional that they're giving you the wrong answer. But your observing is going to be the most powerful thing, I think.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. So the time is really of the essence.
Yeah, give it some time. Don't rush into it.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Do not move in after a week, people.
I mean, you can. It just won't be helpful to your relationship.
Or maybe, I guess, you'll get to know that person very quickly.
Very quickly. Yeah. I think it's also, too, like, if you do move in with them, you both have to have the mutual understanding of this wouldn't work. Because I did that. With a past relationship. We moved in together extremely quickly.
I've done that with every single relationship I've ever had. Full disclosure.
And I think we were on the same page, because in my thought process when he moved in was we're still in the learning stage and this still may not work. And in his mind, he was like, this is my forever person. I know exactly what I want. This is my house. Like, and it's not like I was like, this isn't your house, you know, it's trial period. Mm-hmm. You know, I didn't say that either.
But you had the assumption that we were all on the same page.
Yeah. And so, again, the communication just wasn't there to be able to come up with that mutual understanding of, like, if you move in, this still necessarily won't work. And I even think, like, if you have, like, I don't want to be doubtful in a relationship, but I also think there's a healthy amount of, if this doesn't work,
how do we want to handle it?
Yeah, how do we want to handle it?
I think that's an important conversation. That is an important conversation. Mm-hmm. Wade and I have had conversations about that.
Same for me and my partner.
Yeah.
Just to ensure that level of, like, safety, that feeling of safety is there.
Yeah, like, who are you going to be in the event that this doesn't work out?
Yeah.
And just having that conversation. And I think sometimes it doesn't necessarily go that way. Like, people can have higher hopes. Because breakups are very ugly and hard sometimes. And when people are hurt, they don't always act like their best selves.
Right.
But I think having the conversation prior at least helps you. Because you could be like, remember when we talked about this, who we said we wanted to be during this? Mm-hmm. Like, I would like for us to be those people. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be mean to you. I know you don't want to be mean to me. Let's try to be kind to each other through this situation.
Yeah. Communication. Yes. So how important, so I guess let's talk about some deal breakers, because that's the buzzword we've used this whole episode, but what the hell is a deal breaker, and how do we know when we have them?
I think we have to know who we are first, because if you don't know who you are, you're not going to know what you want and what you don't want. Mm-hmm. Like, if I know that I'm a religious person and I want my partner to believe in God, a partner that doesn't believe in God is going to be a deal breaker for me.
Mm-hmm. Like, it's almost like we use these things at work called core values, you know, and stuff like...
Yeah, what are your core values?
Like, it's stuff like accountability and compassion and teaming and engagement. And so, like, those are just for work purposes. But, like, what are your core values? Like, for me, I would say... Big shocker, communication would be a core value for me. I think intellectualism is a good one for me, because I love to critically think. Mm-hmm. Like, it makes my brain happy when I can critically think about something. Like, we were playing that game last night I was telling you, Catan. Mm-hmm. And it's just such a critical thinking game that I was just, like, giddy, like a kid when trivia. I was playing with it.
I love it.
Trivia, yeah. So any person who challenges me in like a critical thinking aspect, that's like all I need. Like, I'm getting goosebumps right now.
If you're gonna nerd out with me, hell yeah.
Yes. So that's an important piece for me. I could give a shit less about your past. I could give a shit less about, this is where we're different. Like, I want this person to have goals, but it's not something that's a deal breaker for me. So I think that's where we differ.
Yeah. And I think also, at this stage in the game, we've been through enough relationships that we know what wasn't working and what was.
And we can weed out if it was the partner that it wasn't working with, or was it me that wasn't working with.
For example, sometimes I get annoyed that my partner wants to always go and do all these adventurous stuff and is always trying to force me to do it. But I've come to realize that if I were left alone, I'm kind of a boring person. I want to be adventurous, but I'm not going to actively seek out adventure, which I think is why I pick partners that are adventurous, because then it forces me to go have these adventures that I want to have, but I know that I won't have on my own. So that's like a thing going into a new relationship that I would know. Like, I need you to be like a spontaneous, adventurous person, because I'm not going to be, and that I want to be. Mm-hmm. I want somebody that I can laugh with. I want somebody I can have good intellectual conversations like this. Like, if you were a friend, like, if you were a girl, you'd be my best friend. That's what I want in a partner.
Yeah.
Somebody that is kind to other humans. If you're a jerk to the waiter, I already know. Like, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
Like, if you treat people poorly, that's going to bother me. I'm not going to respect you. I need to have respect for the person that I'm with and think that you're a good person. These are all things that, like, think about who your friends are. Like, what makes a good friend? Somebody I can have fun with, somebody I can talk to, somebody I can be honest with, somebody that sees me and all my faults and accepts me for who I am.
Ooh, that's so important.
If you're really bothered by people being, like, I need to feel free. And if I know that you are going to just, like, stifle me and don't want me to do anything without you, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
It's getting to know who you are and the things that are important to you. Mm-hmm. And I think if you play this game, okay, play this game. If you're going to go out and find a new partner, play a game. Make a list of all of the things that were your favorite parts about every relationship. Okay? Every relationship you had, if you could in imaginary land mold that person into one person and pick all your favorite qualities, what would they be?
Yeah.
Like, list those out, and then list, like, the things that really sucked in the relationship that didn't work, that you don't want, so that you can actively think about that before going on a new date. Because if they have 10 of those things on the list, do you want to go down that road again? Mm-hmm. Do you have the energy to do that again?
Yeah.
Do you want to work through those things and this person's worth it? Because they have all the things on the good list? Then you can make that decision. But do it with an open mind and think about it.
And then I think it's important to note again that how you figure out these things is observation too. So, like, you can have your little... I love the idea of having something tangible. I love that because I am such a hands-on learner. And so writing things down, like, okay, so I've talked about this before. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping. But I was in Narcotics Anonymous. I did the 12 steps. A lot of that was tangible writing, right? Just writing and tangible. And so it was so fun to learn, like, tangible things. I remember that my sponsor told me one time to write all the guys I had a physical relationship with. Because one of the things I was working on in my steps is physical intimacy versus relationships. And that was, like, a huge thing for me. Like, that was a big thing for me. And so it was something I had to work towards. So we kind of pivoted and did that. And it was, like, so eye-opening to me to write that list and then just kind of sit in the fact that, like, wow, maybe 60% of these people were just
physical.
Yeah. And so it was really mind-blowing and profound to weed out, like, okay, so if these are the physical ones and these are the ones that I actually cared about, like, I need to reevaluate that. Mm-hmm. And so that was interesting. And then, yeah.
Another writing tip, too, like, after you have the date, write how you feel. Write what you noticed about that person.
That's a good tip.
Because when it's fresh in your brain, you might forget or you might not notice that you noticed.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're trying to evaluate it afterwards and really put it into words, sometimes you'll notice things you didn't realize.
Yeah, I love that tangibleness of that. And then knowing, of course, knowing what you want.
And asking if this person is that.
Yes.
And if they're not, stop feeling bad for every person. It is not your job to love some poor, lonely person just because they presented themselves at your door.
Mm-hmm.
That's not your job. It's not your job to give them the love they always craved in their life. It's your job to pick a partner that's going to work for you.
Yep. And I think...
Don't be Captain Save-A-Ho.
I love that. And also, I think it's important to give ourselves some credit for, a relationship is a fluid thing. It's not like one person or the other. It works both ways.
Mm-hmm.
It's a companionship. It's a, if you break down... Do you see me trying to do that?
Yeah. There's a hair on her microphone.
Okay.
Sorry.
It works both ways. It's fluid. It's you give, I get, kind of thing.
And
vice versa. Yeah. And I think that keeping that in your core values, I guess we can call them, is important too. Like, because that's something I think about all the time. Like, I don't like it, and I don't know if anybody else feels this way, has felt this way in relationships, but I don't like it when you're at that teeter where you're like, I feel like I'm giving more, or I feel like he's giving more, or,
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know if you felt that in a relationship where you're like, wow, this is uneven, and I don't like that uneven feeling, how am I going to fix that? If you're, like, at that level in your relationship where that teeter is off, that,
You know what? I think there's something to be said for people that come at relationships with, like, a business perspective. So, like...
Do you feel like I'm doing that?
No.
Okay.
But what I mean by that, it just made me think of that. So what I mean by that is, like, some people will get into relationships. So, like, some men will be, like, very comfortable in the masculine role. Like, I want to provide financially.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to cook all the meals. So, like, in one area, he's carrying all the weight. In another area, you're carrying all the weight. Mm-hmm. But if you go into that relationship knowing that this is the part that you play, this is your role, and he's never going to help you with this role. Unless, like, you're ill. And you're never going to help him with that role unless he's ill. And knowing, like, this is the responsibility that I would like for you to take on in this relationship, and I'm willing to take on this one. And if you can agree on that in advance instead of it being a surprise later, like, how come I'm the only one cleaning the house all the time? Mm-hmm. Well, because I'm working all the time. But if before you have those conversations like, hey, I really hate cleaning, and, like, my sister should have that conversation. And her husband knows this about her, but... If she were to, when she met him, say, hey, I hate cleaning, I'm never going to clean, if that's a problem for you, just know that that's like, I hate it. Hire a housemaid, something. Like, or if a person is like, hey, I will handle all of that. I hate going to work. Like, I want to be at home to do creative, beautiful things. So if you're cool with being the person that works, I will clean the house, I will cook, and I'll deal with most of the kids' stuff. I may need your help in some stuff. And if you're comfortable with pitching in on this area that I don't like, that would really work for me. But in that way, like, you're carrying different loads, but everybody's carrying some weight.
Yeah.
If you're the person that's working and cleaning the house and raising the kids and cooking, and the other person's sitting there playing video games, that's an uneven relationship.
Yeah.
What are you? You're bringing everything to the table, and they're bringing what? Their presence?
Yeah. I think, too, also, with the physical stuff, there's also that emotional level of the teeter being at a happy medium, too. Because, like, if you are pouring into this relationship emotionally, like, making sure, like, you're providing for them emotionally, and you're being that person for them emotionally, and they're just not emotionally available for you, that feeling is almost even more crippling than the physical stuff.
Yeah. Emotional relationship, being there for each other and being able to communicate and see each other is very important. Human connection is very important.
Yeah. So, like, because I've had that where I had a partner who helped. I had a partner who, like, we were pretty 50-50. I mean, we both worked. But that it was constantly my job to make sure that the emotional connection was there. And it was exhausting.
And if you know that that was exhausting for you in a previous relationships, that needs to be something on your list. That's a deal breaker. Yeah. You know what I think we also need to touch on that I didn't think about until right now? Society sometimes will make us feel like things are wrong when they're not wrong. And what I mean by that is sometimes society says, well, men need to be emotional and they need to be in touch with their feelings and they can't be bossy and they can't be masculine. And when you are in a relationship with somebody that is masculine and has emotional maturity, it can be in touch with their feelings but doesn't cry all the time. Sometimes we have a tendency to be like, well, society says you should be crying. Why aren't you crying? Mm-hmm. Or society says that you're my partner, so you should help me clean the house. Mm. Even though when we got together, you told me you were never going to clean the house. Sometimes society will trick us into thinking we're being duped or we don't have enough.
Especially with social media these days, too. You see all these influencers or couple relationships doing the things on social media, so you're like,
why don't I have that?
This is what it needs to be.
But is that even important?
It's not. Yeah, social media sucks. I mean, I definitely get into the videos and the reels, and I have people that I follow and things like that. But please take it with a grain of salt. When you start setting expectations on your partner, you're setting your relationship up for failure.
Unless there are expectations that you guys set together,
right,
at the beginning of a relationship or in the middle of your relationship,
right? So that I'm going to say it again: when you set relationships for your partner,
yes, expectations for your partner without your partner's involvement.
Yeah,
if you're setting relationship expectations, the two of you together, that's beautiful. That's wonderful. That's probably very healthy. But when you're doing it subconsciously, without their input, that's just going to lead you down a world of hurt and trouble.
Yeah, you're gonna end up fucking yourself there.
I think that's a really good idea, though, to talk to your partner, like, what weight do you want to carry in this relationship?
Mm-hmm. That is important.
Because if you guys can talk about that, and you could say, you know what, I really struggle with being the one that has to deal with making sure we're emotionally connected. Mm-hmm. And I need for you to help me with that. Mm-hmm. Then that person knows, like, okay, put this on my list. Especially men. Men want to do the things that you want them to do. They just need to be told givers. What that is. Yeah. If I tell my partner, hey, I need to take a vacation every year, he's going to do whatever he can to make sure that we take a vacation every year.
Yeah.
But if I just go into it thinking that he's going to mind read and know that that's what I want, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. And that's how my partner is too. I love that about him, is that he'll make mental check notes and know that these are things that are important to me. Mm-hmm. And that's important too. That means they're emotionally intellectual and emotionally available for you.
Choosing a partner that is willing to see what's important to you and make an effort to make those things a reality. That's important. And it goes both ways. You have to both be willing to do that.
Yeah.
Meeting somebody at the same emotional maturity of you, I feel like, is very helpful.
Very. Extremely helpful. Wow.
We talked about a lot.
We did, and we kind of veered, and I love that about us.
We just kind of willy-nilly go with it.
So this entire month was about relationships, and strong ones, toxic ones, good ones.
Not so good ones.
Not so, yeah. All the in-between. So if you guys have any feedback for this little mini-series, please provide it in the comments.
Yeah, or if you know somebody that you would like to have us on for the next season on the topic of relationships or love or whatever.
Yeah.
Let us know.
Send them our way.
Yeah.
To just kind of recap this whole little mini-series, I want to say that, first of all, we are not relationship experts. But we have grown through a lot of relationships. And
I feel like I've had enough relationships to be an expert, but I'm not technically one.
Yeah. But if you liked what we heard, or if you liked what you heard, there we go. Words are hard. Just drop us what your favorite piece of this little mini-series was.
Yeah, or if you have any input or like something that just made you think of something, let us know. We like to engage with our community. We are really trying to make this podcast a space where we can help people and where we can provide valuable information. And if there's more information that you want on a specific topic, please let us know, because we We're just here to give to you guys.
Yep. And share all of the good nitty gritty, good and bad, all the things in between. Yes. So just to kind of give you guys a little heads up for next month, February is the month of love. So we will be talking about self-love.
And we talked about love with others. Now it's time to talk about love with ourselves.
And that is the most important thing, I think, that we can do for ourselves is love ourselves. Mm-hmm. So for the month of love, all month in February, we will be talking about self-love. So
and we have some cool people coming on.
We have some amazing guests coming on. So stay tuned and keep a listen for the next mini-series on self-love. And always, thank you everybody for listening.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Growing Up for Adults. Look us up. Shoot us a like.
And share with someone, please, because we would like to help other people.
We would, yes. So until next time, everybody, we appreciate you listening and thank you.
Love you.